This episode is sponsored by Linode. Linode is offering listeners of this podcast a $20 credit, which is good for 4 free months at their lowest plan. Their plans start at 1 gigabyte of RAM for $5 a month. You can get your servers in any of their 10 data centers, and their high memory plans start at 16 gigabytes. Get a server running in under a minute. They do hourly billing with a monthly cap on all plans, and add-on services like backups, node balancers, Longview, etc. VMs for full control, running Docker containers, encrypted disks, VPNs, etc. You can run a private Git server. They provide native SSD storage, 40 gigabit network, and Intel E5 processors. They have 24/7 friendly support, even on holidays, and a 7-day money-back guaranteed. So go check them out at linode.com/JavaScriptJabber. Hey everybody, and welcome to JavaScript Jabber Show. This week on our panel we have Aimee Knight.
Hello from Nashville.
Rumor has it that AJ O'Neill will be showing up here in a minute. I'm Charles Max Wood from devchat.tv, and we have a special guest this week, and that's Eric Berry.
Hey, coming at you live from my basement in American Fork, Utah.
Well, I'm awake now.
Yeah. You forgot the yo, yo, yo.
Yo, 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 coming at you live.
Yep.
I don't need any caffeine now this afternoon.
Oh, there we go. Yeah.
Thank you.
So, yeah, anyway, now, Eric, I've known you for a long time, and you are also a panelist on Ruby Rogues, but what else should people know about you?
Devilishly handsome. When I grow a beard, I get a white stripe down the middle. It's really weird. I think my feet are really good looking, and my wife tells me that's not the case. Man, that's probably all that you need to know about me.
You know what else
Ruby
grows
developer for 10 years. Yeah, I mean, what do you want to know, Chuck?
Yeah, well, you know what else grows a white stripe down the middle, right?
You didn't hear my first point. Devilishly handsome.
Devilishly handsome, right?
That's right.
All right. So, anyway, we brought you on to talk about open source sustainability and Code Sponsor, both of which are interesting, and Code Sponsor is a project you're working on. But let's start out and just talk about the problem, open source sustainability. And I thought kind of a fun way to start this out is we all know people who have disappeared from the programming community. And so I thought we could just, for a moment, talk about some of the projects that we've seen either lose their maintainer or, people who have disappeared from the community that we just kind of go, oh, well, what if, right?
Yeah. Well, the first one that comes to mind is PhantomJS, right?
Uh-huh.
It became such a struggle for the maintainer to keep it working properly. And then when Chrome came out and said that they have a headless tool that they can use, he said, I'm out. And I don't blame him at all. It's really hard. Now I'm coming from the viewpoint of not having any popular open source repositories myself. I am a user of popular open source repositories. So, but over the years, yeah, you always see when you're on GitHub, you see no longer maintained, go here, or no longer maintained, or looking for a new maintainer, or something like that. You see that at least once or twice a month. Yep.
Aimee, do you have a project that you can think of that has gone unmaintained or?
So back when I was I did a little bit of Rails. Who was the person who it was not
Why
devised.
the Lucky Stiff?
No, who's the person who did all the Rails casts, and then didn't he have a gem?
Ryan Bates?
Yeah.
Yeah,
Ryan
what was
Bates.
his gem that wasn't devised?
Cancan.
Yes, thank you. But didn't people take over that? But still, that just kind of shows you like the burnout and stuff.
Yeah, somebody took it over. And yes, Ryan actually, when he disappeared from Rails casts, he cited burnout as one of the reasons.
Yeah.
So
I don't know how some people do it.
yeah, well, and he actually had Railscast Pro, so he was making money at Railscasts, but it was still a ton of work. And he was releasing an episode a week that was free. So yeah, I definitely see that. I was thinking of Why the Lucky Stiff, and he was a big contributor to the Ruby community. I mean, he wrote blog posts. He wrote Why's Poignant Guide, which is a book about Ruby. All kinds of libraries that people were using. and a few things went down that didn't jive for him, and he was gone. And people had to actually scramble to find copies of his libraries, because when he disappeared, he just turned off his account. And so then there was this whole frantic movement to find people to take over all of his projects and to find copies of the code.
Yeah.
I guess in JavaScript land too, the most like famous person I can think of who had just tons and tons and tons of packages on NPM was TJ. I can never pronounce his last name.
Yeah.
Thank you. I mean, I don't know how that worked, if he like proactively found maintainers or if people in the community just took that up. But, and I know from what I've read, like maybe some of it was a little bit of burnout, maybe just burnout like in JavaScript land. Because I know he went quiet for a while, but now he's really been a lot more active, but more in Go.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, another instance, and this came up during the episode that we did on NPM, where, or it might have been in one of the interviews I did with one of the folks from NPM, but they mentioned that at one point there was a dispute over a name of a module or of a library. A company basically filed DMCA or whatever, because the package had the same name as their brand. And and they wanted it,
or not patent, trademark infringement.
Yeah.
Right.
And so anyway, there was a lawsuit and all this stuff, and he finally just, because he was maintaining it for free, but it was something that was used across all of Node. And so anyway, it just kind of soured him on the whole thing. He was a volunteer, he'd been doing it, and so he pulled his library, and then Node land started to break, and they actually undeleted his package just so that people's packages would have their dependencies. And so, I mean, we see
left pad, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was left pad.
Mm-hmm.
So, I mean, we see it all the time, and sometimes it's burnout, and sometimes it's I'm doing this for free, and then you came by and crapped on my work, or I'm just not willing to fight this for something that I'm doing as a volunteer.
I think I think what's accepted, and a lot of the mentality out there is, look, it's open source, it should be free, you should be working on it for free, there should be no monetary or any reward for it, because this is your contribution, and we don't want to diminish the value of your contribution by having you be rewarded in any way. And I think what happens a lot of the time is you get these developers who get burnout, and instead of trying to support them, what they do is like, okay, just turn it over and we'll pass it to the next younger guy, and then they'll take it over, and it's a cycle of burnout.
Yep.
And that's, I think, where we're at today for a large part. It's acceptable to these guys build these open source projects not knowing where it would go, right? They don't know if it's going to become big or popular, and they all have different reasons to build them. Some of them may want to do it because they're doing it for their work, and they've extracted it out of work and made it open source. Some people do it because it's fun. Some people do it because it is solving an itch that they have, a need that they have. But what ends up happening, if that project becomes popular at all, it becomes more important to those using it than to the maintainer himself or herself. And so now all of a sudden they've got this great thing that they've built, and they come to a decision where they say, well, do I continue maintaining this, which is taking my free time, so I'm doing this on the side for free? Do I continue doing this, or do I let it go? What do I do? There's actually a tweet by the maintainer, the creator of Gatsby, Kyle Matthews. He said, open source projects often fall into an uncanny valley, good enough to be dominant, but can't attract enough funding to become great. That's a rough spot to be in. Mm-hmm. So that's, I'm kind of leading the conversation a little bit, but that's where I think we're at today. A lot of people are trying to solve this problem. They're starting to acknowledge the problem of open source sustainability, and that we can't just keep on pushing it down to the next developer that's going to come around to take over.
Yep. Well, and it's interesting too. I mean, we have all kinds of solutions for this, right? NPM went commercial. We have, Ruby on Rails is supported by Basecamp because, they built it to build Basecamp and they use it there. We see a lot of these solutions, but it seems like depending on the project, that may just not be the best way to go.
Yeah, well, there's actually a really cool blog, a cool GitHub repo called Lemonade Stand by Nadia Engbal, who works at GitHub, and she lists all the different ways that you can sustain and fund your projects, and they range from crowdsourcing to bounty. So there's a Get Bounty or Bounty Source. There's donation buttons like Patreon or Get Pay, or I can't remember what Get Pay is now. But and then there are different ways like sponsorship, like going out and getting sponsors to support your project. And then, like you said, company supported. Also, people are like, for example, I can't remember his name, but the owner of Sidekick, he's now making
he has a pro
incredibly
version.
good. Right, for the pro and the enterprise version, which
Mike Parham, absolutely, but not everybody. So, these are all great solutions, right? And they all work for some people. The problems with crowdfunding is typically it's a one-time deal. That'll take you so far. It's not sustainable. It helps, but you also have to have a certain amount of notoriety or popularity to be able to generate that. The bounties are great, but typically they're not solving the maintainability problem. They're more solving the issue of this bug exists. I will pay to have somebody fix it. The donation buttons are what really drove me to think about CodeSponsor. You look at all these different repos, and I talked to a lot of guys, and when I say a lot of people who have these buttons on their GitHub repos saying, hey, help me out, pay me. And it's difficult to do that because, one, people don't pay typically. There's a thing in your head saying, why do I pay for open source? And then the other thing is that that's, again, not going to bring in hardly any income at all, if any. I talked to Kent C. Dodds, who's got a very popular set of repositories across Env. He's very he's a huge contributor to the open source community, and he has that button on every single one of his repos. And I asked him, how much have you made so far? And he said 0. He's made no money. Nobody's donated. And this guy's incredibly likable. He's a fantastic person. And he's fairly well known. He's been on this show.
Yeah, he's very well known.
He ran JavaScript Air. I mean, all kinds of stuff, but yeah. TC39, PayPal, yeah. Yep.
So he told me that's not working at all. And then the thing about sponsorships, and the thing that people don't like about sponsorships, is you're going to get so there's two parts to a sponsorship typically. One, if you're being corporate sponsored, they have expectations out of that sponsorship. Typically they're going to sponsor because they want to support the project, but they want to support it in their direction that they need. I'm not saying it's a bad thing. It's just what it is. The other thing is that it's also the first thing to get cut on the budget. If they are sponsoring a project and if that company needs to tighten the belt, that's the very first thing that's going to go. So again, it's not sustainable. It's not long-term sustainable. So that's why I started thinking about this, and I have a little bit of a marketing background. I thought, well, actually, if you want something sustainable and scalable, it's got to be beneficial for the people who are paying.
Yep.
And so I thought to myself, well, who would pay developers for this? And I thought, well, developers have a unique, developers are great. I love software developers. I'm a software developer. I have been for 20 years. They take care of each other, right? Hackers don't hack hackers. Hackers hack other people. Developers will always take care of other developers. We kind of follow this code of ethics that's unspoken, but it's very real. And so developers they have their repos where they have tons of people coming to their website, to their repos, to their documentation sites, to NPM, to GitLab, to Bitbucket, to all these different places to read the documentation for the open source projects they're creating. Well, the idea behind CodeSponsor, you take those projects and you allow companies to place a highly relevant, unobtrusive ad where we don't do any tracking, don't do any we don't do any tracking, we don't sell the data, we don't do anything like that. And by doing so, it makes it so that sponsor can get their message out in front of all these developers, and they're rewarded by hopefully increased business.
Mm-hmm.
But then that becomes scalable. So that's kind of how it all came about.
Yeah, I mean, the other thing is that I've thought about doing this for podcasts, because one thing that I found with podcasts is that if you reach a certain volume, then finding sponsors is easier. But for some of these smaller projects, or smaller podcasts, that are, under $2,000, $3,000, $4,000 or listeners per episode, it's kind of hard for them to find sponsorships just because they don't have the volume. And I can see, some of the libraries out there having the same issue, right? They're not Lodash. They're something else. Oh, yeah. And so, I could see Code Sponsor coming in and, you're talking about, putting sponsorship messages in the README, but I could see that solving that problem for them, because essentially what you do is you negotiate a rate with the advertiser and say, hey, look, we'll get you so many impressions. And then you can spread that across all these little guys, and they all get something for their work, where they probably wouldn't ever be able to get that on their own without it.
Exactly. 2 months ago, I thought, I wonder if I can create a prototype that would do this. And I wrote up a silly little Rails app that allowed developers to sign up through GitHub, mm-hmm. to generate, they import their GitHub repos. It'll create them a simple tag that they can place. It's just an image tag. It's an ahref tag with an SVG in the middle. And they can place that on wherever they want. And what it would do is it would then hit Code Sponsor every time that loads, and it would determine what image to present and what data to present. And then on the other side, I tested it out, starting with myself as a sponsor, and then I tested it out with Timber. Timber's great, Timber.io. And they said, yeah, let's give it a shot. They gave me $150. They said, let's give it a shot. And we did. And within that first month, they saw 4 new signups. And I haven't followed up on how many it's at now, but it was a great success right out of the gate. And so, let's see what else we can do with this.
Nice. And I'm somewhat familiar with this because I've talked to Eric about this. And so I'm afraid I'm going to skip over some of the essentials. I'm hoping AJ and Aimee will chime in with questions if they have them. But one of the things that I like about it too is that it's just it looks like it looks different from the README, but it's just text. And so it's not like flashing in my face when I'm looking at the README or anything like that. It's pretty unobtrusive and just, kind of easy to read as part of the thing. Oh, somebody's sponsoring this. That's great.
Right. The we wanted to make sure that what we put in front of the thing that we wanted that we can never do is break trust. We can mm-hmm. never break trust of developers. Every single decision we make is, does this help the open source community? If it does, then it's a go. If not, then it absolutely just doesn't happen. So when I created this ad graphic, it's a dynamic SVG. It generates the text and allows me to add text and whatnot. A little bit of coloring, but not much. No logos. When I did that, I made it look different enough from the docs that it would not be considered deceiving, mm-hmm. but similar enough to the docs that it would not be something that would draw your eye unless you're reading it.
Right.
And the intention was to make it so that we don't want to turn GitHub or any other site into a spam haven. We don't want to do that. But we do want to solve the problem. The core problem is we want to help these developers find funding. Let me just tell you 3 of the projects that we're helping right now. Currently, we're helping Bulma, and I love Bulma. I'm a big fan of the Bulma CSS framework. And Jeremy Thomas is the maintainer of that. Now, that repo has I believe, 18,000 stars.
Oh, wow.
19,000 stars. 19,344. Maintained by one person, right? And so one guy's maintaining that. And Progress, another node module. That one is created by Rico St. Cruz, one developer. And then another one that we're doing is Passport by Jared Hansen, one developer. The whole Passport that everybody uses for authentication, and a lot of people use for authentication in Node apps. So GitHub had a study done in 2016 that's called a novel approach for estimating truck factors. And what that does is they found out what the truck factor or the bus factor, as I've always known it.
Yeah, that's what I've heard of it too.
How many people have to get hit by a bus before this project is in dire need of help? And they've determined that 2/3 of the top open source projects out there are basically being maintained by 1 to 2 developers.
Oh, wow.
Basically, if 1 or 2 developers, if the 1 to 2 main developers get hit by a truck, that repo is in serious trouble. And so we look, you go around and you look at all these projects, you look at everything that you're building right now and say, of course, NodeMon is widely popular, so it's got to be heavily maintained. Something like Axios, of course that's heavily maintained. All of these, Phenomic. I'm looking at a list right now. So many of these repos are maintained by so few people.
Mm-hmm.
And they love that it's helping people, but they're struggling to justify maintaining this because they're not getting paid for it for the most part.
Yep.
So that's where we're trying to help. This month alone, actually to date, we already have over $1,500 in distributions that we're giving to developers. This month alone, we're over 1,000. Actually, I think we're at 1,300 this month already.
Oh, nice.
So we're making a difference.
Yeah. And I think one thing that people don't understand as well about open sources is not just the code. It's not just the maintenance. I mean, you get pull requests, you have issues come in. Mm-hmm. I have a good friend. I'm not going to say who it is, but he wrote a system that people used quite a bit several years ago. And he set up an IRC channel for it. And he was in it all the time, answering people's questions, helping them out, doing all this work. And a bunch of people got in and just started ripping on it one way or the other, and he was volunteering like all his time to it. And that's when he threw his hands up. Other people I've heard, it wasn't maintaining the code. It was handling the pull requests and having all the issues come in that burned him out. And so, even just a little bit of a thank you or a little bit of, even if it's just, enough to go pick up a meal at McDonald's or something, it's just kind of a, hey, celebrate, I'm getting something for this besides, kind of the pat on the head or the pat on the back that I get when I go to the conferences.
Yeah. Yeah. My goal with this is to be paying a whole lot of car payments every month.
There you go.
That's what I'd like to be doing. I'd like to be paying hundreds of car payments every month.
So I guess one thing that I wonder about a little bit, there are a handful of questions I want to ask, but the first one is, some people aren't going to care about the money. So, right. Code sponsor, it seems like, for people that, they want another reason to do it, it makes sense to put it on there. But, there are also going to be people that just, for whatever reason are going to go, you know what? I don't want the money. So,
right.
How do we help those people with sustainability? Or, are we focused mostly on just, helping them in this way, and then maybe the community can step up in another way for those folks?
No, that's a great question. What we do is I have a budget every day that I can spend, that our sponsors say, this is what I'm willing to spend every day. This is what I'm willing to spend every month. And this is what I'm willing to spend in total. And they prepay me. And so I have a certain amount of money that I'm ready to give out. So I'm looking at these every day, and currently it's manually assigning all of these repos to make sure that everybody gets as much money as they can and everybody gets representation, but that money will run out on a daily basis. And when it does, what we do is we have integrated Open Collective. So Open Collective is a fantastic organization that allows you to set up a collective and receive funding for that, and then that funding is it's public funding. So when they receive money, it is everybody sees where the money's going, what the money's being used for. But what ends up happening is now organizations like, for example, Webpack is fully funded through Open Collective, and Webpack they now have enough money to drive that project for probably as long as they want.
Speaking of another project that, at least up until recently, was one guy.
Right. Yeah, you're exactly right. You're exactly right. And so that they're doing a fantastic job. Pia Mancini, I talk to her all the time. She's a wonderful person, part of that group. I asked her, I said, is it possible that we can set up some sponsored ads for some of your collectives? For when we run out of money, we can do that. So that's what we're doing. We have these ads where it's free. We don't charge for it, but we don't pay the developers. But what ends up happening is we show ads for example, Women Who Code or the Open Collective Initiative, or we have one for the veterans, wounded veterans, to help them learn how to program them and their families. Another one that we do is Women Who Code. And so all these organizations are fantastic organizations that need funding. That's a really good way for us to get that message out. And it's so nice because we can get that in front. I can get that in front of thousands of developers every day, tens of thousands of developers every day, with a click of a button. And it's fantastic to be able to help spread that message out that quickly. And that's what we offer for those who are not interested in the money, is then let us help spread that message, and you choose your charity, you choose your collective to give the money to, and then 100% of the money goes to that. Or what? So it wouldn't be money; it would actually be, you would be basically embedding a link directly to those collectives.
Right. So the other question I have about this, I know we talked a while back, and you were in the middle of talking to GitHub about making this work well with them. Right. And I know that's, since been worked out, and it's on the GitHub.
No, it hasn't been worked out.
Okay. Well,
not yet. It's being worked out.
Okay. Well, I've seen the banners on GitHub readmes. Let me put it that way.
Yeah.
And somebody tweeted at us because they were like, wait, didn't you guys get shut down for this? Is GitHub allowing this now?
Yeah. I read all about your experience, and I wanted to talk to you about that. That was a sad time. I'm sorry you went through that. That's not fun.
I agree that we definitely didn't go about it the best way. It wasn't gone through a marketing department with like, how should this look and everything. It was just like, let's get some exposure real quick, throw it in a README.
Right.
Right. So I agree that from some of the lashback on it that, no, we didn't go about it the best way. But then the way that it carried out without communication was really the breakdown. So I'm glad you're having that communication to some degree.
Yeah, in fact, I got on a call with somebody at GitHub, along with Kent C. Dodds, and Kent shared his concern with them, saying, "Hey, I really love Code Sponsor, but I don't want to be shut down." And they assured me that would never happen. They don't look at Code Sponsor like they don't want it to happen. What they want is, we just need to follow the guidelines. We need to follow their terms, and so we are making some changes that are going to fit right into those terms, and I'd like to have that done by the end of the month. That's the goal.
Whenever I have a new idea for an app, one of the first things I do is go find a domain name for it. The company I use and have used for years is hover.com. Hover.com has a clean and easy-to-use interface. They don't try to upsell me on a bunch of services I don't want or need, and they provide free whois masking for the domains I register. So if I register a domain that's not directly tied to devchat.tv, people don't need to know that I'm the one that owns it. They also offer domains with all kinds of top-level domains like .codes and .computer, and others like .coffee and .pizza. So when you have your next idea strike, go to hover.com/JavaScript to get it. Once again, that's hover.com/JavaScript. Yeah, but at the same time, I mean, and I'm just going to preface this by saying that I'm moving most of my private repositories and some of my public repositories off of GitHub and onto a private GitLab setup. And that's mostly just because I'm a control freak and I control. Anyway, right. So, and I have had some minor issues with GitHub, but I don't hate them. And a lot of the projects that I use are hosted on GitHub. So I want you to be on GitHub because I want them supported. And so
Right.
I'm happy to see that. I'm happy to see that you're there and you're involved. Can you embed this on GitLab or Bitbucket or whatever else?
The only thing that is tied to GitHub right now is the authentication. So if you get on and you want to, so the link that you use to put on any site, there are three things that it needs. It needs an API token, it needs a repo name, and it needs a username on that repo. And as long as you don't have the same repo on GitHub as you have on GitLab, or at least as long as you haven't authenticated both, then it's not a big deal. So yeah, you can put that on there. We also recently made it so that we can have website widgets, which are very classy looking, because we found that a lot of people wanted to put these ads on their websites, and I think that's great to put them on the documentation side, but they're not formatted for documentation. They're formatted for for READMEs. So we created a different version, and because I'm a developer and I do everything with the mind of what would I want as a developer, I gave complete options. So it's a script, but you can actually view the sources of the script. It's just all it does is basically call another one and embed an iframe. But it allows you to pass in the width, the height, the theme, so dark or light theme, and also whether you want to show or hide the image. So it looks like a text image, and then a little thing at the bottom saying powered by CodeSponsor. And so you can actually block that image if you want. It really depends. Look, I just want the whole core of it is we want to help developers get funded. That is the only purpose for CodeSponsor. That is the only thing. We want to help sustain open source through funding. So I will do anything I can to make it so that developers can be successful in this without turning anything into like I said, a spam haven. What we don't allow is for this ad to be placed twice on a website. We don't allow for this to be played. We will not be a part of any repo or any developer who is trying to just spam the heck out of people, because I don't think that's better. I don't think that's best for the open source community.
That makes sense. So yeah, so you kind of talked about the steps of getting this set up and installed on your repo, but do you just kind of want to walk through it? So if somebody goes, you know what, I have a repo, people are using it, maybe you have a handful of stars and you're thinking, you know what, people are coming and looking at my README, what do? They go to codesponsor.io and sign up?
Yeah, you can go to codesponsor.io and sign up. Just so, and again, I'm very open. My newsletter every week includes our stats, includes all of the data. I'll be open. Right now I'm charging $1 per click, and I'm paying out 50 cents per click, and that's kind of how it's been since day one. We want to make sure that it is scalable on the sponsor side. So to kind of back up, I'll answer that question, but let me first add something. Our sponsors are fantastic. They want to help open source, but they also want to be able to make this a marketing decision as well. So by having that price at $1, at least for now, having that price at $1 makes it so they can scale this. And if they can scale this, that means that we can help more developers. And so I get companies like, do you mind if I share my list of sponsors we have right now?
Oh, go ahead.
Because I'm very proud of them and I love them very much. First and foremost, Timber. Zach over at Timber is a great guy. He was our very first sponsor. Then we got Rollbar. Mike Smith at Rollbar is a fantastic person. And he's really been a huge help to the success so far of CodeSponsor. We have CoreLogix, and they are a logging and analytics platform that uses machine learning. Track.js, Circle CI, Auth0, CodeCov. Those are the active sponsors we have right now, and every single one of them want to help developers. They're all like, we want to be a part of this, and it's great because ever since we started, I thought, oh man, I gotta start doing sales calls. I gotta start convincing people of this, and now at least once a week, I get an email from another company that I'm already familiar with saying, hey, how do I be a part of this? It's really a fantastic thing. And so as developers, if you have a repository that you want sponsored, or if you want all of your repositories sponsored, that's great. Typically, you're going to end up making 50 cents for about 50 cents. You're going to get 50 cents a click. And for every 1,000 impressions that you get, now that's total impressions, not unique impressions, you're probably going to get about 7 clicks, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think so. So it's a 0.7 click-through rate. So I think it's 7 clicks for every 1,000 impressions. So you can kind of guess, like, well, based on the impressions that I have, that's how many I'm going to get. So this is how long I can expect to be paid. We have a minimum $20 payout. And that way we're not paying all the fees on every payout. And like people get $2 in funding. That doesn't really help. But they go to Code Sponsor. They sign up. Super easy. It's a one-click thing. Then they can go to their repositories. They just they go to the active repository or the available repositories. They select it out of a list, and then it just gives them the embed code right there. And that's all they have to do. They just have to add that to the README, and it's done. And they're now in the system. They're getting paid. They're sponsored. That's it. Mm-hmm. We make it so you don't have to talk to the sponsors. What Code Sponsor does is offers a blind sponsorship to developers. So developers don't actually have to interact with any businesses at all to get money, and businesses don't need to interact with them. So we're that shield between the developer and the sponsor. So the sponsor can't come in and say, "Hey, we want this done," or "Hey, we're paying you. You should be nice to us." That's really not the case at all. The developers plug in a Code Sponsor and are automatically given those sponsors. In the future, and actually one of the things we're going to do for the GitHub compliance is we're going to switch over to where you can choose which sponsors you want to support you, and then choose which charity sponsors as well you want it to be supporting. Mm-hmm. And so that's the thing that I'd like to have done by the end of the month.
Cool.
But yeah, it's that simple. It's a really simple platform.
Now, do the sponsors or the repo owners specify, like, this is a JavaScript project, right? An NPM module. Or this is a Rails project, so maybe it's relevant to people who are doing web or Ruby.
Exactly. I spend time with every sponsor and learn about their business, learn what they're after. And we have a tagging system. We actually use the GitHub tags, the GitHub topics. And based on the topics and the language, I'm able to determine who is a good fit for that.
Okay.
And that's how I've been doing it.
Mm-hmm.
And also I have been trying to read every single repo and understand it and manually assign. That's the thing. I've been doing this for 2 months now. Mm-hmm. It's primarily me. I had one guy helping and he kind of dropped out. So it's basically just me. Nate, I don't want to discredit him. He was a huge help, but he also was not able to continue. So here I am. I'm having to manually do these assignments, and I have 446 repos that have the Code Sponsor link on it. 446 repos I have to go in and understand and manually assign every day. And so it's not something I can continue to do.
Makes sense. I'm not sure if there's anything else that I am dying to know. AJ, Aimee?
I really feel like the advertising model of the internet, it stems out of the dial-up approach of like dial in, store your stuff somewhere else, put the burden of the cost somewhere else, and it's got to be recouped somewhere. And I feel like that's a model that just continually leads back to centralization over and over and over again. So do you see any path for the future where we could get away from advertising, whether it's through like maybe a digital currency or some other method of value exchange that doesn't like always lead back to these centralization problems, where we could have a more federated approach or peer approach?
I'm trying to make sure I understand the question. So you're saying that if we can get away from the financial benefit and have it be something more, where something on a higher level than financial, is that kind of what you're asking?
Not higher level than financial. It's just like, I think that advertisement leads to a lot of ills. You know, like you say, right now you're not doing tracking, you're not doing profiling. You're not doing the things that most advertisers are doing. But the pattern that we see is that as a source of revenue becomes greater and starts to have its weight pull on it, it starts to reach out for other avenues that sometimes become, well, pretty much every time become less and less and less ethical. Because you are the dude here, I don't believe that that's going to happen in this case. But I think in general, advertising is a model that leads to unethical outcomes, like trying to get people addicted to behaviors and whatnot. Like some of those things come out recently. So I'm just wondering, do you think that there might be a path in the future to shift in another way? Obviously, it's being tried right now with things like GitPay and whatnot, and advertising has proven to work, but it also is proven to centralize and demoralize the payment channel over time.
You're exactly. No, that's a great point, and it's interesting. I talked to one of the guys who is using CodeSponsor, and he's actually making a fair amount of money with it. And he said it's a good thing and a bad. He said, I like CodeSponsor and I don't like CodeSponsor. He said, I love it because it's helping. It's absolutely helping. But it's also changing the way I look at things. He said it's changing. He said I could see how it could change motivation if it becomes too big. And that's not what we're after.
Absolutely.
No, I exactly see where you're coming from. Absolutely. It depends on the type of person, I imagine. It really depends on the type of person. Now, companies like GitHub could possibly make something like that possible. I don't know. Could I imagine it? Yeah, I could definitely imagine it, and I hope it happens. I really hope it happens. I hope that CodeSponsor is not the only solution out there that's scalable. I hope that it's not the only place where people go. But I don't know. To me, it's not about the money. It's about the time that money affords, and it's about the justification that money affords.
Absolutely.
Yep.
Yeah. So I mean, we're all developers. I know both of you personally. I know you somewhat personally, AJ. We all get paid good money, right? We're not poor. So it's not like $100 a month is going to make a world of difference, at least for us. But $5 a month, ironically, might make more of a difference. Or $1 a month might make more of a difference because it's not about the money. It's about the recognition. It's about the acknowledgement, and it's about, hey, somebody knows that I'm doing this, and I feel like I'm making a difference. And I think that's such a core part of it. Like, for example, I set up AdSense, and I set up AdSense at one point on a website of mine that was a blog, and I thought, I made a penny today. I made 2 pennies today. And of course, I didn't care about the money, but I cared that something was happening and it was motivating. It made me come back and made me want to be a part of it some more. And I think that's where whatever solution comes out after CodeSponsor or during CodeSponsor or whatever, I think that's really the key point is how do we get people to love what they do more to where they can justify spending the time, justify spending the weekends, or justify with their bosses to support it. I don't know the answer, but I hope so.
Yeah, I think one other thing, you're kind of talking about this, idealized thing where, all of the incentives line up to always be virtuous, even if you don't have virtuous people piloting the open source projects or, the go-between, that's going out and negotiating on behalf of all the developers, be it CodeSponsor or somebody else. But the problem is that, there are certain aspects of human nature that just make it really hard. And a lot of it isn't that people are greedy or that they don't care or anything like that. And I think a lot of people kind of attribute some of that negative energy to this. And I really don't think that's the case. I think people get comfortable, right? They get comfortable, gem install Rails. They get comfortable, hitting the CDN and pulling down Angular. Or, installing the Angular CLI and having it build and having it go out. And they don't think about the work that goes on behind the scenes. And so because they don't see that work, they don't see the blood, sweat, and tears that go into it. They don't see the developer that's maintaining the project staying up until 3 a.m. because they're not there. They're here. They're sitting at their desk at their work and, just kicking back and relaxing. And so, because they don't see that, there's not that incentive, there's not that, gratitude that's kind of drawn out because you see this, it's in your face. And so because it's comfortable, I go to GitHub pages. I've probably gone to some of Kent Dodd's GitHub pages, and I didn't even see the donate link because that's not what I was there for. And I didn't think about the work that he put in. I was thinking, you know what? I need some docs. Oh, here are some docs. This is how this works. Great, good. I'm off to the races. Pat on the back. Next time I see Kent, I'm going to give him a hug. But I mean, that's it, right? I mean, even if I know the guy, and I know Kent because he's a local guy, but it's that. And so, unless we can really kind of drive home to people that there's something behind this, that there's something to it, and kind of create that awareness that, I've gotten something and I should give something back. I just don't see that a system that doesn't have the reciprocity is going to work. And I think that's why CodeSponsor really does work, is because there is that reciprocity, right? The company gets the attaboy and the pat on the back for supporting open source software, but they also get marketing opportunities that pay off so they can justify spending the money on open source. And so, I think we kind of get these ideas that, there's got to be a way where everybody's doing the right thing and that's why it works. But in practice, I don't know if we're ever going to get to that point without being much more aware of where the things that we have come from and having it make us just a little bit uncomfortable so that we're willing to donate $5 or do whatever it is that we're supposed to do in order to make it all work. And so that's where I really see the payoff for CodeSponsor for the community, is that the people that want that traffic get it, they get the payoff, and we get to continue to do awesome open source stuff. And then if some better system comes along, we'll go for it. But if it doesn't, this works. And so, that's why I got excited about it and wanted Eric to come on the show, is because I really see that, this does line up incentives without creating anybody being beholden to anyone else to do things that they otherwise wouldn't do. I mean, I don't think companies put pressure on developers to do things that aren't in the best interest of the project, but it does take time away from the things that are in the best interest of the project, if you know what I mean. And so this sets up all the incentives to work the right way as much as possible without counting on people actually being hyper aware that every single open source library that they pull in and all of their dependencies came to them because somebody else put in ours.
So piggybacking on that a little bit, there's a huge myth in the open source community that I'm so glad we addressed today, and that, Eric, you really brought to light, that people often feel like, we're told that the beauty of open source is that, people are going to contribute, and there's more eyes on the project, and it's a community effort, and everyone's involved, and there's like this real big ethos build up around open source. But in reality, you don't get contributors, you get complainers. You don't get a team of people that are constantly working with you, and you're not making money off of it. Like when we had, that lashback on our projects, there's people that were just incredibly, incredibly hateful. And I realize it's, a vocal minority. It's not representative of everyone. Right. But I think there is a huge misunderstanding, is that, these are projects that even when they're sponsored by a company or have a company's name on it, it's because somebody was doing it while they were consulting, or they were doing it while they were in school. And then they got involved in their company and they were like, hey, my company, here's this thing I did. And then it moves over to that GitHub repository. But really, it's not like that company was paying for it, or that company really developed it, aside from the, a couple of the big ones like Facebook and whatnot, where they, it's a big marketing thing. They completed it, they got it to 100%, then they released it open source. It's really a slow process, a difficult process, and it is oftentimes very thankless. And that $1 or that email, that personal email, because they hunted down to find your address to say, hey, thanks for this, that is really, helpful. And I am really glad that you're seeing success with CodeSponsor, because I think, if projects could get, say, $600 a month just to hire someone that's a college student that loves the project, that needs a little bit of extra money, that they could put in maintenance work on it while the person that originally created it is, off doing their day job and doesn't necessarily have time to get into the minutia anymore, it would be a huge help, I think, for those projects. I mean, I know it would be a huge help for projects I have.
Absolutely.
Yeah. Well, and if you have a $200 car payment, you can pay the intern and the car payment if you get $600, right?
Absolutely. Now, one of the concerns that that was brought up to me early on, in fact, pretty much every person I've talked to had this concern. Well, there are two primary concerns. One, I'm not the only contributor on this. I've got a team of people that work on this, so I can't get paid. So to those people, I say that's why Open Collective exists, and you don't have to use Open Collective. We can pay you direct, and you can divvy it up how you want. But if you did want to go that route, Open Collective, you can create an organization on there that will accept the money, and then the way it works is you actually submit receipts. So, for example, it'll pay for conference trips, it'll pay for stickers or T-shirts, it'll pay for meetups, that kind of stuff. So that's one thing you can do. The other concern that I've heard many times is I don't work on it anymore. It's near feature complete. I don't, it's kind of self-maintaining now. It's not a big deal. I don't want to why should I get paid on something? And I think that's very much a developer mentality and not an entrepreneur mentality of I built something that the only time it has value is if I'm actively working on it. And I've gone through this myself, but all of us, I mean, every developer that I know, the dream is to build something that pays you when you're sleeping, right? The perpetual income. But we do that every day. We build tools every day that can generate income. Why not use that income that you would normally, you use that for different open source projects? Mm-hmm. There's no reason not to put that on projects that are still active, but you're not actively maintaining because it's self-maintaining. Use that money for other open source projects. Use that money for a car payment. There's no reason why you shouldn't be rewarded for that.
Yep. I completely agree. All right. Well, let's go ahead and do some picks. Don't wait for users to report problems. Raygun gives you complete visibility on errors, crashes, and performance problems affecting your end users. You can replicate issues in seconds rather than digging through log files and having to rely on users to report errors or crashes. Raygun gives you a window into how users are really experiencing your software applications. It has full support for JavaScript and all other major languages and platforms. It takes less than 10 minutes to set up, and you can get a free 14-day trial by going to raygun.com and signing up today. Well, I can jump in with a couple of picks. The first one is, so on Ruby Rogues, we were talking a little bit about the keto diet, and one thing that I picked up because somebody recommended it to me is the movie Fathead by Tom Naughton. And Tom is actually a software developer, which is kind of funny. But it was his response to Super Size Me. If you've watched Super Size Me, Morgan Spurlock goes out and eats McDonald's for 30 days and puts on like 25 pounds. And so this Tom Naughton kind of breaks it down and, goes through a lot of the science around, what worked and what didn't. He ate at McDonald's for 30 days and he lost 10 pounds or 12 pounds. So anyway, and I love the premise at the beginning. He says, here's one premise that, I'm just going to start out with. I have a working brain. So, I'm not going to be stupid about this. I'm going to, watch my calories and limit my carbs and, do all the things that the science says. And, he lost weight. But anyway, it was really, really interesting video and it was kind of a fun watch. So I'm going to pick that. Yeah. The other thing I'm going to pick is, I have a Ruby Dev Summit coming up. And I'm also working on rescheduling React Remote Conf. So if you're interested in Ruby or if you just want to hear some of our speakers, we've got people from across the community. Most of them are Ruby people, but the two speakers at the end of the conference are Uncle Bob Martin and Yukihiro Matsumoto, or Mats, who's the creator of Ruby. So if you're interested in hearing what they have to say, you can sign up and then come watch those for free. And then I'll have information on reactremoteconf.com for the conference, and I'll probably be rescheduling it for December or January. And so that should be fun and interesting as well. AJ, do you have some picks for us?
So I'm going to pick something I picked before, but there's that book, Real Love by Greg Bear. And there's so much good stuff that I learned in that. And it opened up my mind and my heart a little bit to really the idea of I don't know, maybe not the idea, but like putting into practice more accepting other people. Like it has this whole concept of, like there's a certain amount of love that you need to feel, and you get some of that through various connections. And some of that might be your significant other. Some of that might be your job. Some of that might be whatever it is, but you like fill this connection repository, this love repository inside of yourself. And then it enables you to give. And if you're trying to give too much to one particular place, you have to go get refilled. And I think that some of those concepts that I learned or like expanded upon through reading that are what helped me to get to a place where I'm engaged now, and I don't know that I would be and it's not necessarily that book made all the difference, but a lot of stuff in there really did, the way I view relationships with people and acceptance and being loving. And so I totally recommend that to anybody that is a human or knows other humans.
That concept's also brought up in the 5 love languages. I think the author's name is Chapman. I'll put a link in the show notes. But anyway, he talks about filling your love tank and then being able to give to other people. And the 5 love languages is about how you receive love into your life. And so it's essentially how to fill that tank, which is kind of interesting. But
yeah, I've also read that and love it. And in fact, if we keep it hush hush, I have on NPM the 5 love languages, but there's a build step required to get from an anonymous source the array of questions, since they are material that cannot be published on GitHub.
All right.
Sounds fun.
Eric, what are your picks?
Actually, my picks are going to be a little bit different. I do picks every week on Ruby Rogues, so I'm going to do a little bit different this time. The last 2 months have been amazing. I got into Code Sponsor. I got into this not knowing what the public would think, what the developers would think. Over the last 2 months, I have felt so much love and support and cheering on every single day by so many people. And I guess I want to pick them out individually and collectively. Nate Hopkins, of course, has been amazing in this. Huge support, developer support, my best friend. PM Mancini and Open Collective. They've been tremendous help on getting this up and going. Eric Holscher at Read the Docs, brilliant person. He's the guy who coined ethical advertising, and he is I worship that guy. Carbon Ads, I love that company. I think they're amazing. Buy, sell ads. Carbon Ads does an amazing job for the open source community. Nadia Egbel, she has been a huge, tremendous supporter and help for this. I was so nervous that people would reject Code Sponsor. And every day I get more and more people telling me it's helping them. And they're so excited for this to work. So I just wanted to share my love back publicly to all of them and say, this is going to work. And thank you for that support, because that is really, it was unexpected, and you have no idea how appreciative I am of that. It gives me the energy to continue down this path, because I do believe in it. So that's my really weird pick, I guess.
Nice. Way to share the love, Eric. Aimee, why don't you go ahead and do your picks?
So for my first one, I feel like so much of the time we hear a lot of unhappy updates about women in tech, or, diversity and that kind of stuff. So on the Envision blog, there is a blog post about positive experiences for women in tech. So I wanted to share that, since it's a little bit different from what we're used to, and thought that would be pretty positive. And then for my non-programming pick, I'm going to pick handwritten cards. Because my mom last week sent out a bunch of handwritten cards, and she sent one to me, and I just thought that was pretty sweet. So
Let's go.
that is it for me. Sorry about the noise. There's like really bad storms here.
Nope, it's fine. It was raining here earlier today, so.
Sounds good.
All right. Well, thanks, Aimee. All right. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap this up. And yeah, I'm just excited. If you're interested in this, if you know of companies that should be sponsoring open source, or if you have a project that, you want some monetary support for, then definitely go check it out. And that's codesponsor.io, correct?
Yes. Sponsor with a OR. I need to register ER because people keep misspelling it. So codesponsor.io.
All right. Well, we'll go ahead and wrap this up, and we will catch everyone next week. Bandwidth for this segment is provided by CacheFly, the world's fastest CDN. Deliver your content fast with CacheFly. Visit CACHEFLY.com to learn more.